Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Grant. I'm the chair of the Harvard Village, or the NetZero Committee, I should say, of the Harvard Village Residents Association. Thank you very, very much for joining us this evening. We have a really rich presentation. In a moment, I will introduce Ryan Pierce from Samsung, who's our guest presenter. You'll also have a chance to watch a short video of one of our local residents who has already purchased an induction stove and her sort of testimonial. And then I'll turn it over to Susan McDonald, who's done more work than anyone to set up this webinar and the induction stove bulk buy. And she will do a short presentation on how people can participate in this bulk purchase. But first, before I do that, I want to say a couple of things. We have not promoted this webinar as much as we normally have promoted past webinars. So I particularly encourage you, if you find it worthwhile, as I expect you will, to please share it with your friends and neighbors. We're certainly going to be trying to post as early as tomorrow the link to the recording. And we know this is going to be a very popular session. We already know the induction stove bulk buy is going to be very popular, so we anticipate the vast majority of people who listen in will be doing so after this evening. I also want to thank Matt Hoffman, who's in the background, who did set up the registration and is sort of helping us with the technical side. And I also want to thank the residents associations across the city who have promoted and will be promoting this session in their upcoming newsletters. So again, we do have another session coming up on e-bikes on June 8th, featuring an e-bike promotion we're doing with 3 different kinds of e-bikes: folding bikes, cargo bikes, and regular commuter bikes. And if you'd like to learn about more sessions that we're doing further on, I'd encourage you to sign up for our mailing list on the net that you can find at the very bottom of the NetZero page at harvardvillage.com. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce our guest speaker, Ryan Pierce. Just thrilled to have him there. He's promised to disappear, so do have a chance to wave at him while you can before he disappears into, because he can't screen share his presentation. We just learned at the same time as allowing us to see his handsome visage. So let me just say he's, as I've come to know, Ryan has been with Samsung for the last 8 years, 6 years in the home appliance division. And during this time, he's conducted many in-person trainings, I should say, as well as webinars to a variety of retail partners. He's also conducted trainings of Samsung service teams in places as far away as the Dominican Republic. And recently he worked with the Canadian National Institute of the Blind to highlight the features of Samsung's smart home technology to those with disabilities. We're delighted to have, as Susan will tell us a little bit more later, a couple of the induction stove ranges and cooktops that are part of the bulk buy that's been organized are Samsung products. But Ryan, a warm welcome, and if you can unmute yourself and screen share your presentation, take it away.
Thank you so much. Hope everyone can hear me. I just wanted to give a quick thanks, quick thanks to Tim and Susan for allowing me, inviting me to come into this, and also thank you for all of you guys attending. Taking time out of your evening to participate in this presentation. It just speaks volumes that you guys are interested in learning about not just induction stoves, but really the crux of this presentation itself, which is some of the environmental impacts that we see with other ranges and why induction stove is such a great option. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and like I said, I won't be able to see you afterwards. So bye-bye for now, and you'll see me next in the presentation. So let's bring that up. And here we go. So the presentation is here. Hopefully everyone can see it. I can't see you guys anymore, so I'm just going to go under the assumption you can all see it. But what we're going to do, as I said, is we're going to do a quick overview of induction as a cooking as a cooking type, right? We have a variety of different cooking options when someone's buying a range, right? It's gas, it's radiant electric, and it's induction. But there's a very specific reason why we wanted to highlight induction today, and mainly it is to counter some of the worrying reports that we're starting to hear come out of gas ranges. Now, this information, or rather the impact that we're seeing, is not new, but some of the information, some of the surveys, some of the reports that we're finding are recent. So let me just move on to the next slide. So there was actually a study published earlier this year in January that did find that natural gas stoves, which, and this is the key part, which more than a third of American homes use, are emitting concerning levels of indoor air pollution. And they could play a larger role in driving some of this climate change more than previously believed. I mean, obviously, natural gas, we know that this could be emitting things that could potentially harm the environment, but the overall levels we assumed were less. But as these reports come out, we're finding that it's higher. And even the most worrisome is that even when these devices aren't being used and when they're on, and even when there's a ventilation hood over top, that air is being sucked up and removed, we're still finding that these gas stoves are shown to release methane, other harmful leaks. And again, these are potent greenhouse gases that are harmful to the environment, but also harmful to the customer. And that's kind of the two pillars of this, right? It's potentially harmful to the person living and using this on a day-to-day basis, themselves, their family, their pets, but it also has a wider impact to the greater picture, right? Looking at the environmental cost as a whole. Now, the reason that I mentioned in the US is because, to be honest, Samsung, me personally, when we find these results, the US is more of a litmus test for Canada, right? We find that studies are done, reports are filed in the US, we see action, we see legal changes, we see precedents in the US, and then shortly thereafter, Canada does follow suit. That's why we're focusing more on the US, whereas in Canada, there aren't quite as many studies released. Again, just putting some of this in context. So some states already, like Massachusetts and a few cities in California, are already pushing legislation to outright ban some of these natural gas hookups in new buildings. And part of the way to smooth that transition is promoting and providing all new electric constructions, as well as offering incentives and rebates. So even think back to the last few years, I can speak to this in Ontario, where we were offering Energy Star rebates to customers who are buying certain appliances. So for example, at a Best Buy or at a Home Depot, if you would buy a laundry pair, there was actually a rebate provided if that unit was Energy Star certified. So a very similar trend we're going to see with this, rebates and incentives towards the sale of induction ranges, towards the sale of electric ranges, okay? And in December 2021, New York City actually became the largest city in the US to enact such regulation. So as I was saying, I expect us to follow suit. We heard of this even in Canada. This is starting to sort of peek its head in Canada as well. We're seeing this in Vancouver. We're seeing this in British Columbia. This is not a, your grandkids kind of thing. This is like within the next few years. We're expecting 2025, 2030. This is going to be a fairly quick change in the industry. So again, that's why I really appreciate you guys taking the time to participate in this presentation and learn a little bit about it. So there's all the doom and gloom about natural gas stoves and some of the potential issues that we have. Now let's talk a little bit more about the alternatives, and the primary one we're going to speak about tonight is induction. Now I want to go a little bit in detail into exactly how induction works, just because induction is still a little, there's still some hesitancy, some sort of mystique surrounding induction in North America and specifically in Canada. When we look at markets in Asia, when we look at European markets, induction is very, very popular. It's prevalent, everyone knows about it. But once you get into the US, once you get into Canada, there's still some myths, there's some apprehension. There's, oh, I don't want to have to buy new pots and pans for this, or will it work, or is it dangerous? I don't know how to use this. How does it work? So we want to try to dispel some of those myths in this section right here, and then we'll transition into some of the benefits of utilizing induction ranges. So first and foremost, how it works. You'll see on this image here, this kind of highlights what I'm going to describe right here, but the key thing to note is that induction does work very differently than a standard electric radiant cooktop. So they might look very similar. If I put a radiant cooktop beside an induction cooktop, I would even be hard pressed to pick which one is which, because they typically look the same, right? It's a coil underneath a ceramic glass cooktop. But really the difference with induction is, as opposed to radiant electric, where that coil is heating up, it's turning red, we know that that's generating the heat, and now my pot is going to get hot, and now my water is going to get hot. With induction, there's actually a magnetic circuit under that cooktop. And when you put your induction capable cookware on top of that, it completes that magnetic circuit. And now I have that electrical current running from that magnetic circuit to the pot. And in a sense, the pot is now becoming the element, right? So I know it's a bit of a tricky concept, but think of it more like the filament inside a light bulb, right? When you run electricity through it, when you create that circuit, that's what's generating the heat. It's the same exact thing, but now the pan is becoming the filament in the light bulb, right? The pan is actually heating up directly. That's transferring that energy directly into the food, directly into the water, and doing the much more efficient, much more powerful cooking, while minimizing some of that radiant heat loss. And that's something that we'll see in one of the next slides. But that's at its core. Right, I don't want to bombard you guys with electrical engineering or too much complexity, but at the basic level, that's how induction works. Now, as I mentioned, there is some apprehension about, okay, I'm not sure if my existing pots and pans will work. The easiest way to test it is with a simple magnet test. You can go at home, you can get a magnet, stick it to your existing pots or pans. If that magnet sticks, you know that that unit will be perfectly appropriate for an induction range. Okay, let's have a look at the next slide here. So now we're going to get a bit more into some of the benefits of induction cooking. And really, first and foremost, we're talking about power, we're talking about efficiency, we're talking about precision. When you're cooking, even if you're just boiling water for your craft dinner, right? You want things to be done quickly, you want things to be done efficiently, and precision matters because you don't want to either boil that water too fast or not boil it fast enough, overcook or undercook. You want it to be done as efficiently as possible. And induction is all about that precision. Again, some of the reason why you may see lack of precision in, let's say, a radiant electric is because what happens is you can't really change the temperature or the power output of a standard electric range or a standard electric coil, because it's either on or off. So when it turns on, it goes full blast. Yes, it needs to heat up, but I can't actually control. I can't do 25%, let's say, on an actual radiant electric, whereas I can do that very precise, very specific power level with an induction. And this is why professional chefs love gas. Honestly, they love gas because of that power and precision, but more of them are starting to love induction because they're finding very, very similar results in terms of power and speed and efficiency. So just looking at this graph here on the right-hand side, it's nothing, nothing too concrete, but again, it's just highlighting this was done with a 6 liter pot. And what it's done is it's calculating the time that it takes to boil. So if we look on the right side, that's actually a gas, results from a gas range. It takes about 14 minutes to actually get to that boiling point. Whereas we see induction, the Kenmore and the Samsung there are at 9 and 7 minutes. You're getting almost half the time to boil. Again, that's because you're driving all that energy directly into the pot, directly into the food. Now, to highlight that just a little bit more, let's look at this image here. So when you see on the left, 50% efficiency. Well, what does that mean? What's the concept behind that? Well, think about a gas range and think about that flame. There's almost that primal sense of, oh, okay, I'm cooking with fire. Oh, it's it looks powerful, but if you're seeing that flame, then it's technically radiant heat loss, right? That heat is going, and that flame and that power and that energy is going everywhere except the pot. There's only a very small area underneath the pot that's actually getting that direct flame. When we look at radiant on the right-hand side, again, it's a little bit more improved because it's a smaller coil and you're getting a bit more direct heat. But as soon as you transition to induction, you're getting close to 90% efficiency because, again, you've got that magnetic circuit and all that kinetic energy is going directly from the pot into the food. No radiant energy lost, no heat lost. All that energy is directed to the food. Now, we'll see this in a little bit more, but I want to take an example here to highlight that. If I'm boiling a pot of water on a gas range, I can't really put my hands anywhere near that. I can't put it on the side of those grates. I can't put it beside it because there's so much radiant heat and radiant energy being put off. Same thing with a radiant electric. If I put my hands kind of around any of that red coil, I'm going to feel that heat. But again, the benefit of induction is I can put my hands literally right beside that, full power boiling water, and I'll only feel residual heat from the pot itself, not from the cooktop and not from the elements. So carrying on here, the same concept that allows us to have that precision, allows us to have that power, also goes hand in hand with being more safe. When we think about gas ranges, right, we don't really have a child lock. We might have child lock for the actual control panel for the oven, but there's no real way to child lock the knobs. There's no real way to child lock the actual gas burners themselves. So again, you'll have to teach the kid, and it's whole part and parcel. But generally, these are not really considered child safe. Again, as I just mentioned, this cooking surface becomes neutral because all that heat is only within the pot itself. So as you can kind of see in that image there, the hand can be right beside that pot without any residual heat. So it's great for people who are unfamiliar with induction, but specifically it's great for people, with young kids, right? I mean, you see, infants and kids, if they're pushing themselves up on the oven to see what's cooking, you would tell them, oh, don't put your hands anywhere near that flame or anywhere near that, cooktop. But with induction, their hands could literally be right beside it with no risk of danger. And obviously, as we highlighted earlier, there are no associated chemical, natural gas, methane, any other greenhouse gases obviously attributed to induction. So not only safe for the family, but safe for the environment as well. Moving on to one of the last benefits. Now, obviously, there's more than 3 benefits, right? But these are the 3 things we wanted to highlight it, just make it very, very clear for you guys the true benefits of induction. It's easy to clean. I'm hoping you guys don't have these analogies. I have some of these, but cleaning a gas range is not fun. Removing the grates, cleaning the grates, the cast iron grates, cleaning the burner caps, cleaning that stainless steel, whatever the ceramic underneath. Even cleaning a radiant electric is not fun. If you spill water, if you spill any type of sugars onto the glass, it will start to eat into the glass. It's called pitting, and you can never remove that. You can never clean it. You can use ceramibrite as much as you want, but that is etched in, it's discolored, is ruined for the rest of this product's life. Induction is very, very easy to clean, again, because there's no residual heat on that ceramic cooktop itself. We like to do little cool demos where we'll actually put a piece of paper towel on the cooktop and then put the pot above it. That induction, that magnetic circuit makes a connection through the paper towel. So you're still getting the heating, but if any water spills out of that pot onto the paper towel, it's a really easy cleanup. You just take the pot away, clean it up, no muss, no fuss. Very, very, very easy to clean. And trust me, this is one of those things where if you talk to someone who's used gas and has nightmares of cleaning, and then you go to induction, it's one of those, once you go induction, you don't go back, right? Even for just a simple cleanup. Now, I'm going to show a quick video here that just highlights some of the points I've been discussing. So let me click play, and there you go. So what we're going to see is what they've done is they've actually cut an induction pan in half, so you can see the results of cooking with the results of the actual cooktop itself. So first of all, just similar to that paper towel issue or story I said, he's putting the pot on top, and we can see that it's still heating, it's still boiling that liquid, but it's not doing any damage to the magazine, and the cooktop itself is totally cool to the touch. Similar thing with an egg. Break in there, heating up already instantly on the power of that induction, but then on the side without, nothing. It's still going to make a mess, but it's not going to cook into that. It's not going to pit into that. It's not going to burn into that burner. Chocolate, right? Making some fondue. We can see here that, again, half of it becomes more moist, more pliable, where the other half, even though it's on the direct surface, there's no melting directly off the pan, right? I don't know who's going to cut their pan in half, but it makes for a good demo, right? Similar thing with bacon here. Again, you can cook it right there, and the hand is right close. One is cooking, one is right there. No heating to the hand. Like I said, easy to clean up and very, very safe for the user. Let's move on to the next one here. So just to wrap up very briefly what we've talked about with induction, there are a couple more details to note. Obviously, it is a more powerful electric element, so it's not going to be the same as induction. Some people, prefer the 120 voltage out of that, but these induction do run on 240 and they require 40 amps, right? Just some more technical aspects for you guys if you do decide to go with induction. And again, like we mentioned, it can only be used with a cookware that has a slightly higher iron content. Now, a lot of cookware, pots and pans released recently will say right on the front, induction ready. But if you've got, grandma's old cookware and you're just not sure, go ahead and do that magnet test to double check. But things like aluminum, glass, ceramic will definitely not work in this case. High efficiency, right? Gas, you don't notice it so much, but electric, if it takes 15 minutes to boil that water, that's a lot of energy that's going really nowhere, right? So what we can see with induction is that your electric bill will be reduced, even if it's $1, $2 here or there. Higher efficiency does result in a lower electric bill. Again, we want to get that precision, we want to get that power, that pro chef level. Even if you're just a budding chef or you're trying to be Jamie Oliver, you want to have that control at your fingertips. Faster boiling, we covered most of these. And again, having that safety feature, especially with young children, is key. Now, this is the truth, is that typically induction ranges are more expensive, right? It's a different type of technology that goes into it. It does tend to be a little bit more on the expensive side. But as we're going to see in the next few slides, there are a lot of different options for customers when they're, they finally, okay, we're going to jump in the deep end, let's get an induction. There are a lot of different options to choose from. So let's look at that very, very briefly, right? I want to give you guys a quick snapshot on what to look for with your induction range. So before we get into some of the specific designs, specific styles, first and foremost is that power level of the burner. So you can see on the right-hand side here, we do have an image there where we have 4 burners, so they will accommodate a variety of different size pots and pans, but it's that front right that's going to give you much more power. And this is what you want to look for. You want to make sure that that element that you're getting is as high power as possible. In this case here, it's 3.8 kilowatts or 3,800 watts. So it's very, very powerful. That's going to get you that boiling water very, very soon. But there are some other things to consider as well. There are things to consider inside the oven, right? There are a lot of trends that we want to see. How many racks are there inside? Is it true convection or fan convection? Is there air fry? How many knobs are there? Does it match your decor inside? Lots of different things to choose from. I know it's complex, but we can see a couple of different examples here, just as a way to, again, dip your toes into that induction waters and make the best decision for yourself and for your family. So on the screen, we see here portable induction. This is a great way to just test out induction, right? Maybe you have a gas, maybe you have an electric, and you're still not 100% sold on induction. These are a great little option. You can buy it, you can set it up on your countertop, and you can see the power of induction without outrightly, replacing your existing cooking setup. So these are a great option. They're available, for a fairly reasonable price. And they're great just to, again, get an idea of that power, get an idea of that easy cleanup. And then from there, okay, yeah, you know what? I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to get ourselves a new induction range. And at that point, like I said, you've got a lot of different styles to choose from. First and foremost, you have the difference between slide-in and freestanding. What we see on the left-hand side is an example of a freestanding range. The reason that it's called freestanding is because, the idea is if I have a full countertop, and then I have an empty space at the end, this range can go on the end because the one side is still has a panel. It's still fully finished. It can stand wherever. It can freestand. It can be in the middle of the kitchen if you want it. Again, looking here, we see 4 individual burners there. We see full touchscreen at the back. Again, this is something else to consider. Do you want a more analog control knob to do it? Do you want a more tactile touchscreen? Whatever you want, just make sure you try the different options, see what suits you best. On the right-hand side, we see a Miele induction range. This is what they call a slide-in. So this is going to fit into a pre-cut out cavity within that either countertop or island or whatever I have set up. This is a great option there as well. Again, we see 4 burners. That left one is probably going to be the power burner. Again, you have the knobs at the front to control that power and a touchscreen to control the oven itself. Now, those are what we call ranges, stoves, freestanding or slide-in, but they're also standalone cooktops where maybe, again, I have a countertop, I have an island, I have a pre-designed cutout where I want to put a cooktop in. Induction has that suited as well. So again, as we see in the background here, this is a really unique option. It is a feature that is unique to Samsung. I'll promote Samsung just a little bit here, but what we can see at the bottom there, that's actually a removable magnetic knob. So this specific cooktop actually gives you the best of both worlds between having a tactile physical control that I just put on the control, as you can see right there, and I can control my power levels, or I can remove that magnetic knob. I can either use my finger to increase power, or it's just a great way to, when it's time to clean up, remove that knob, take your, your microfiber cloth or your paper towel and your multi-purpose cleaner. Very, very easy to clean up. So again, a couple of images here highlighting the same thing. Really, really safe for kids. You can see the child's hand, very easy for them to control as well, or set the child lock on this, which again is another plus for induction over gas. We have timers built into these, very, very easy to see, and the magnetic knob that we mentioned already. Here are two other examples of a built-in cooktop. We have a decor on the right-hand side and a thermidor, decor on the left and thermidor on the right. But again, this highlights a few different design and feature aspects that you can see. So we have our circular burners there, which are perfectly understandable. But on the left-hand side, we see these quadrants, these rectangles, these little squares there. Those are traditionally called flex zones or flexible zones, where what I can do is I can put pots of varying sizes. It might only be in one of those quadrants, and I can control that separately. Maybe the pot takes up two of those quadrants. I can put it in there. Maybe I have two smaller pots, one at the lower part, one at the upper pot. They can be controlled separately with the same temperature, different temperature in those specific flex zones. So lots of different options for you there. And then lastly, this is probably too fancy even for me, but I thought I would at least mention this is a little bit more interior design as opposed to appliances itself. But there's a trend now in induction called integrated induction, where the actual induction cooktop is actually built into the surface of your, as you can see here, the center island. So for example, when it's not in use, you can't tell that it's not marble or granite or whatever that material is in the center. But as soon as you put the pot on the pre-designed space, there we go. We're seeing that boiling water directly on the countertop itself. Everything else is not getting heated. As soon as you remove that, it would have no residual heat. So that's a nice, sleek little design. Maybe a few years down the road, this is something we could think of. But this is becoming popular even now. So with that being said, that's the end of the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and we'll open it up maybe for some questions before we carry on. Let me see how I can get out of here now.
Thank you very much, Brian. We will actually hold off on questions for a few minutes, okay. But that was excellent. And boy, those visuals really help. So thank you. We will definitely be turning to you to answer questions that no doubt people have in not too many minutes. The next thing I want to do, and I'm going to see if I can screen share and show a video. I'm having some challenges with Zoom, and I may need Matt in the background to run this video if you're not able to see. I see a few people have got their video on. If you can let me know with thumbs up or thumbs down whether you can hear the voice of the presenter as she introduces her, does a little testimonial about her induction range, then that will help us know whether this is working for you. So let me just try a screen share, and I will go and get that video. Sorry, this is going to take a little longer. Apologies for the delay. Here we go. All right. Okay, so now I need to, oh, sorry, let me just close this, start again. There we go. Let's try that.
Doesn't seem to be working, Tim.
It does not. And I've.
Hi all. So here's the corner of my kitchen that has the induction stove in it. As you can see, it's got the glass top, it's got regular oven, it's got buttons across, it's a range. It replaced a gas range. And one of the big questions that you
The
would
video
ask, so here's,
doesn't work.
this is
Tim.
the cooking surfaces on my stove, which is a Fisher Paykel.
Tim, why don't you go ahead and stop the video and I can run it from mine.
Got it at the back.
Okay, thank you.
When I turn it on, I get an indication that it's on, because it's not as though I have gas, and you can see the gas, but here I'll turn it on. And that shows what level I'm at. Now I'm at,
Can you just stop the video, Tim,
maximum.
or?
I'm trying to actually, it's no, okay,
All right, let me go ahead and share mine and see if it works.
please, thank you, Matt, for rescuing me there.
Ah, that looks good.
hi all. So here's the corner of my kitchen or the big part of my kitchen that has the induction stove in it. As you can see, it's got the glass top, it's got a regular oven, it's got buttons across, it's a range. It replaced a gas range. And one of the big questions that you would ask, so this is the the cooking surfaces on my stove, which is a Fisher Paykel. So big pot, littler pot, a big pot at the back, small pot at the front. That's the one I use mostly. And when I turn it on, I get an indication that it's on, because it's not as though I have gas, and you can see the gas, but here I'll turn it on. And that shows what level I'm at. Now I'm at maximum heat. This water, if I fill this with cold water, it's done in about, I don't know, minute and a half, full boil. Anyway, it's great. It's a great thing. And the bottom is just a regular electric oven. Lots of controls, lots of functions. In this one, arrow, all these things that I don't kind of quite know about. Anyway, that's the story of my gas stove. It's and the pots. You need to know the pots. So Le Creuset already had this little omelet pot worked, and I checked it out with the and that's an all-clad special pot for the induction cooking. So anyway, great machine, love it. Bye.
And thank you, Sue, who's in the background here, for taking the time to do that recording. I'm now going to turn it over to Susan McDonald, if you can unmute yourself, and I will try another screen share, which I suspect will be a little bit more successful. Well, hopefully a lot more successful than the last one. Here we go. So I can share your.
And Tim, I'll just be in the background. They'll see the screens.
Correct.
Right, good.
Okay, can everyone thumbs up if you can see this presentation? Great, okay, good. Susan, take it away.
Okay, great, thank you very much. That was great, Ryan and Sue. That really helped people understand it. And so the committee had been talking for a little bit about possible bulk buys. And one thing that kept coming up was induction stoves. And there seems to be a real movement, a swell of working towards people deciding to have induction stoves. So we thought it would be a really good bulk buy. So we set out to try and find out if we could find a company, around a retail store in the Greater Toronto area. And we reached out and interviewed several different appliance retail stores in the GTA, and their response was very varied. The team at Best Buy were very enthusiastic right from the get-go. It was great because they really understood what we were trying to do. And within 2 separate meetings we had with them, we had a plan about how we wanted to move forward with this project. And we talked about pricing, we talked about discounts, we talked about supply chain issues, and we got into a lot of detail about their home advisor program. And after these very successful meetings, we decided that our committee would partner with Best Buy. And if I could have the next slide, please, Tim. Yeah, so the team at Best Buy then put together a list of induction ranges and also a list of cooktops, which we'll look at in a minute. These ranges and these cooktops are from a variety of price points, some low, some medium, some high. The Best Buy team was able to confirm that many of the models listed on both the ranges here and the cooktops you'll see in a minute, the availability is quite good. So you're not going to be able to see this very clear. You won't be able to read it, but I'm just going to quickly walk through. In the low range here, we have a Frigidaire, 2 Frigidaires. In the medium range, we have a Frigidaire and we have a Samsung. And in the higher range, we have a Samsung and we have a KitchenAid. And I'm not trying to plug Samsung, but I really liked that one because it had 2 ovens. And I'm highlighting that because if you're looking for energy efficiency and you have a small family, or even if you have a large family and you're just broiling a tuna melt, or you're just quickly roasting 6 strands of asparagus, you don't have to heat the whole oven up. You can use one little oven. And so that's a real added bonus when you're looking at, you might want to consider looking at one that has 2 ovens. Tim, could I have the next slide, please? So these are examples of the cooktops. With a cooktop, you have a separate oven somewhere else in your kitchen, and the cooktop is, on your counter. And so you don't have to replace your oven when you're replacing your cooktop. If you have a gas cooktop, this is ideal. You could just replace that and still use your existing standalone oven somewhere else. Here we have 4 or 5 different examples. In the low range, they provide us examples of a Frigidaire and a Whirlpool. In the medium range, there's a Frigidaire, and in the higher range, they have a GE Profile. But these are just 4 examples, and these are ones that they think that they have good access to, and that they would be certainly willing to discuss with you. I would urge you to go to our website, and you can start to see the details. The serial number would be there, and it would help you be able to, quickly use your internet to do some research on these models. If I could have the next slide, please, Tim. So Best Buy is able to offer discounts between $300 and $900 on the ranges on this list, and between $100 and $150 on the cooktops that you're seeing here. The cooktops are obviously less expensive than the full ranges because they're smaller and it's just the cooktop. The cost of the ranges, vary on this list. They vary from $1,400 to $3,000. And the cost of the cooktops on these lists range from about $1,000 to $2,000. Induction stoves, Ryan did mention they are a little bit more expensive. They have more technology in them, but they're comparable to a good gas stove. So for someone that already has purchased a good gas stove, this would be a comparable purchase. In addition to these models that Best Buy have provided on the list, they're certainly willing to discuss other models that you're interested in. And again, you can find all kinds of higher range models. Ryan did show a Miele there, higher end models, and they often range in the $3,000 to $6,000 range. So there's going to be lots of options for people. And so I would advise you to go ahead and have a look at these. Let me see here. What have I got here? Okay, so you've thought about it, you've been impressed with the fact that maybe it's time to move on to an induction stove, and you'd like to participate in the bulk buy program. Well, the best thing for you to do is to go to our website, and I've got the website address right here, www.harbourvillage.com, and from there you go to the NetZero pages, and you'll find all the information that you need about our Best Buy program. I just want to step back and say that our NetZero Committee has been working with 38 neighborhoods across the GTA, and we've invited all of these people to participate in this bulk buy program. So you do not need to be a member of the Harbour Village to participate. Anyone in Best Buy's catchment area in Ontario can participate. So if you're interested in wanting to buy, or you just want to discuss and find out more about induction stoves and what they cost and the delivery and all that, you can contact Best Buy by using the special form that we've developed with Best Buy. It's located on our website. So once you're on the NetZero pages of the Harvard Village and you're reading it, there's a paragraph that says contact Best Buy, and it says this form. It's a live link, and you just hit that, and the form will come. You'll fill the form in. At the very bottom, once you filled it in, you'll be able to click it, and that will go to Best Buy directly. You contact them by using that form, but you could also, there is a telephone number there too. If you had any difficulty with the form, you could always phone them. Whether you use the intake form, which we're encouraging people to use, or whether you call them directly, you will be contacted by Best Buy, and they will make you an appointment at your convenience with one of their individual home advisors. This person will become your main contact and will help guide you through the process. You can communicate with your advisor once you've been introduced to them and you had your first appointment. You can communicate over the phone, via email, or by text as you work your way through the process of selecting an appropriate range of cooktop for yourself. Could I have the next slide, please, Tim? Before you actually take that step, and given the knowledge that you've gained tonight, and maybe you've also done some research already, I would really encourage you to do some more preliminary research on induction stoves before contacting the Best Buy person, so that you have some idea in mind. You've actually looked at the models that they've got on their list and done some research about them, and you've maybe looked at other models also. I will warn you that once you go down that rabbit hole of starting to read reviews of the various models, it can be a little bit overwhelming and a bit confusing. So start with the models that they have there and branch out from there. There's a lot of information and evaluations and reviews of induction stoves online, and I read many of them. Everyone has an opinion, and every model I looked at had both positive and negative reviews. In the end, I was able to shut out a lot of the noise, and I was able to wade through all this information, and I ultimately selected a model that I really liked, that suited me for a variety of reasons, and also had a preponderance of positive reviews. So that's a process I would encourage you guys to follow also. So once we decided to partner up with Best Buy, and it was Tim and I that were primarily speaking with them, I decided, since I was very keen to buy one, that I would test drive the process and actually see how it worked. They hadn't actually developed the form that you would use at that point, because we were in the early stages. So instead of using the form, which I would have, I telephoned their call center. I introduced myself and I said, I'm with the Harvard Village Bulk Buy Program. I'm not sure whether you've heard about that or not, because it was very early days. The woman was very good. She just took down the information. She said, well, I will make you an appointment. And I gave her some times. And sure enough, when the telephone call came through from my home advisor, he knew all about the Harvard Village Best Buy, because the people that we'd worked with had informed him. And so I started to work with him. I really needed to replace my gas stove, because it was actually failing, and I think it was leaking terribly. So I did a bit of research, and I looked at the models that were available on the Best Buy list. I worked with the fellow that was assigned to me, and we went back and forth. I had all kinds of questions. In the end, I gave him a short list of 3 or 4 models I was very interested in. He did a little bit of research, contacted the various manufacturers to find out what the supply chain issues were, and he sent me a chart of what the cost was and what the supply chain situation was for all 4 of the models that I was interested in. We talked a little bit more. We talked about the fact that in my case, because this was actually purchased for a country property, I was out of the catchment area, and not the delivery to there was difficult, but we worked through it, and they were able to help me, and they accommodated me, and they will deliver to my out of town property. In the end, I had all my questions answered. I went ahead and I purchased it, and then a few days later I freaked out, thinking, did I really do the measurements correctly? Is it really going to stick out too far? I called him back. He sent me a very detailed spec sheet, and we walked through it, and I hadn't made a mistake. It was all perfect, and I again, happy with the purchase that I've made. So I think this process works very well because you can step away from a conversation, do some research, come back to it. They will come to your home if need be. I didn't have that. I didn't need that. I was able to do it all over the telephone and email with the chap that I was working with. But, you know, it may be that yours is more complicated and you need them to come to your home. They will do that. So I would recommend this process because it was much more successful for me than simply walking into a store. Because when I did the research for trying to find a company to partner with, I went into a lot of stores. And the first thing I did before I spoke to anyone was look at the available induction stoves on the floor. And invariably, there were very few there. At one Best Buy store, there was only one, yet they have access to, you know, dozens of different ones. So I think this is a much better process than just walking into the store and being required, you think you're required to buy from what's available, and there's very limited ones available. So I was really pleased with the process, and I hope that if you decide to go down this road, that it will work as well for you. I've put the name of one of the team that we worked with when we first partnered up here. He won't be the person you contact, but you know, you might note his name down if you ever had an issue or a concern, or you just wanted to follow up, or you wanted to thank him. There is his contact information. So like Ryan and like Sue and Tim, I'd be happy to answer any questions specifically about the bulk buy program, but about induction stoves and about what I bought. So back to you, Tim.
Thank you very much, Susan. That was really terrific. I'm going to hold on, keep the screen share for another 10 seconds in case anyone's writing down Jonathan's phone number there, but literally counting down to 0, and we will turn that off. And if you have questions, folks, please put it in the chat. And we will take them one at a time. Looking forward to your questions. Here, I'll stop the screen share. Okay.
Tim, before the questions, I'll add one more comment because Ryan did bring up in the United States rebates and all that. And I do think eventually rebates will be coming for induction stoves, but right now they are not part of the government's green rebate program. It's an extensive program that they have, but induction stoves are not currently included in that.
Sadly, that's true. And it's you know, there's really most single family houses have potentially 3 natural gas appliances. The cook stove obviously is one, water heater if you have a gas water heater, and thirdly a gas furnace. The latter 2 earn you a rebate if you purchase a new, you know, an air source heat pump to replace a gas furnace, or an air source heat pump water heater to replace your gas water heater. Sadly, and for inexplicably, there are no rebates in the federal Greener Homes Grant Program. So that is unfortunate. But however, we do have these discounts that sort of make the cost roughly comparable with new gas stoves, as was mentioned. Okay, let's, I did get a few questions. I'm just going to open up the chat here again and see if there are any questions here. Oh yes, a question from Anne. Do induction stoves make noise?
That's a good question. To be honest, if you put your head right up to it, you'll hear sort of the very faint clicking because it is making sort of a rhythmic sound within that magnetic circuit. But if you're, you know, at the countertop, if you're in the living room, you definitely won't hear it. But there is obviously some mechanical sounds that you definitely can hear it. But it's not as, you know, sometimes you hear sort of clicks and whirs from even radiant, and obviously the gas emission, you'll hear that as well. So I think it's definitely on the low scale in terms of noise.
Great,
I don't hear much at my house. I could play it for you. Why don't I'll go.
No,
you guys keep going and I'll play my stove for you. You won't hear
it. Thank you, Sue. That's called a multitasking here. Thank you. That's great. Okay. One of the comments that was made was getting, which was very helpful, that you do need a 240 volt circuit, which is double a 120 circuit for your induction stove. That would also be true of an air source heat pump water heater. And so that's something to think about in terms of the installation, that, you know, you don't want to swap one out and bring in the new without being able to properly plug it in. So that's something to bear in mind. We may well, once there's a lot of people buying them, that's something we may well look at and see whether there's an electrician out there who can go from house to house hooking up people's induction stoves. But has anyone, frankly, if you've done this and you have an idea of the cost of getting a circuit put in, by all means, put that in the chat. We'd be quite interested to know. And someone's also asked about the disconnection process. Ryan, do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Let's say I've got a gas stove, I put in an order, Best Buy sets up a delivery thing. I presume, would that probably go through Best Buy?
Yeah, I would assume that would be part of either the Geek Squad team or the new delivery guys, or like if you're disconnecting the gas line, right, that needs to be done by a certified gas technician. So that would probably need to be done even beforehand for them to come out, actually turn off the gas line and safely remove that unit. But then the installation and delivery of the induction is very easy. It's plug and play and you're good to go. As long as the voltage and wattage is appropriate, as we've discussed, then the installation of the induction is great.
Tim, Michael Kerman just said he has a quote for getting the 240 volt in the chat.
Of $800. Yeah, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's not cheap, that's for sure.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's one of those things that electricians are an interesting breed, right? I mean, it's honestly not that complex. It's changing a few wires to go from 120 and 30 amps to 240 and 40 amps. Even to go to 50 amps for some 36 wide countertops is not that difficult. But again, you're paying for the trade, because we don't have that sort of common knowledge to do it. You're paying out the ears for this trade. But again, it's just like getting a certified gas technician. You want a proper certified electrician to make sure this is set up properly.
Great, thank you.
Can I just refer a little bit to one of the things to do is to have a plan in place for your house or your unit, whatever, to get off gas, and you have to bear in mind, how am I going to do my electric vehicle? I need a charger for that, so you need a charger to do that. I've got an air source heat pump. I needed to allow for that. So I had to go from 100 to 200 amps. And they just ran a wire to the stove as part of that system. So you might want to put a bigger frame on it than I'm simply doing an induction stove. I'm converting my house to the new energy source, the new technology that'll save the planet. So that's what I did.
Yeah, have a bigger picture rather than just because we are certainly encouraging people to think about getting off gas as soon as they can. And obviously it's not an easy, and it's expensive. There's a question about what is the MTBF for induction stoves versus regular glass top electric stoves. I don't know if you can see the question in the chat, and the person continues, what is the warranty on induction units, and are the individual elements replaceable?
So I don't have the actual data. So MTBF is mean time between failures, right? So it's a way to test reliability. So all I can say is that on average, induction is significantly more reliable than straight electric. But the problem is, if there is a failure, the cost of the parts is usually a bit higher than electric. So you're going to see less overall failures, but when it does fail, it is a bit pricier. The individual elements, the magnetic circuits can be replaced. But again, it's honestly, I find that all of these repairs for any of these glass cooktops is very, very expensive. They're removing the glass cooktop itself. They're removing the actual elements themselves. And to be as honest as possible, we all know that you know, delivery and stock and inventory for a lot of different manufacturers has been difficult over the last few years. While we might have stock of, let's say, the induction range, sometimes getting stock of the induction element itself could be longer. So that could potentially happen as well. I realize I've kind of danced around your question a little bit, but I think that's for the purposes of this presentation. In terms of reliability, induction does tend to be more reliable. But when it does fail, it is a bit more of a pricier fix. By all means, I'm sure we can find the data. You do a quick Google search, I'm sure we can find that actual value between electric to induction, but I don't have that with me prepared for you right now. But that's a great question, though. You probably, well, let's see if this Ryan guy even knows what MTBF means, right?
Well, no, it was a good test. But the question about the warranty, generally, for obviously you can only speak about Samsung.
Yeah. So you know, from like straight out of the box, Samsung has a 1-year manufacturer parts and labor warranty. Obviously, going with Best Buy here, they have their Geek Squad protection, which goes for additional years. But yeah, that first year will cover you. Honestly, the first year is really to get into those manufacturer defects, right? Because if something's going to happen, it's going to happen within the first few months. You plug it in, it works for a little bit, and then boom, the element's gone. That's a defective unit. Samsung will cover that. But anything more than that to cover, you know, failures down the line, that would be through your Best Buy or through your retailer separately as an extended warranty.
Great, thank you. Good. Okay, seeking recommendations of an electrician is one person, and maybe Sue, you could answer the question being asked about how much power you needed in order for it to complete the journey that you described earlier. You can perhaps put that in the chat for us. One of the questions that was asked by one of the residents associations that were distributing the information was to say more about the environmental, you know, we all know about the climate issue, but what are some of the other environmental issues associated with gas stoves? Unlike the other two appliances we have in our house, and Ryan, you know, implied this when he talked about the wastage of the heat that comes around the pot into the room. Those unburnt hydrocarbons are, and burnt hydrocarbons are, of course, emitting indoor air pollutants, but it's really, of all the three gas appliances in our houses, it's the only one with an open flame. It's the only one that creates air quality issues. So it's perhaps the most urgent one to replace. Right. But the problem goes back further. And I think what the most recent studies have shown is that, you know, for all we care in the environmental movement about, you know, pipelines, new and old pipelines leaking, the truth of the matter is the pipes that come into our house are part of that pipeline network. And all the connections that exist, and my old house has a lot of them, are potential sources of leakage. And going back further, Ontario's natural gas supply now is more than 25% is fracked gas from Pennsylvania and adjacent states. And the problem with that is that fracking creates untold amounts when you pressurize these deep wells in order to crack and fracture the rock, subterranean rock, to release that natural gas. You're also creating fissures in the surrounding environment, and methane leaks out of that. And when scientists started measuring all of that, they discovered that, in fact, when you add the release of that very potent greenhouse gas, the impact on climate versus, in addition to burning the natural gas in our homes, that it actually, the environmental impact was worse than coal. And so we really have an environmental imperative to reduce natural gas use in all the ways that we can. Do we have more questions? I see a recommendation for an electrician. Okay. Well, that's great. Okay. If we have last call, I guess, on questions before we thank I'll start thanking our presenters anyways while we wait for questions. Ryan?
I had one last, before you jump in to thank me, I just had one last thing that this actually reminded me of. I mean, when we talk about gas, there's always it goes hand in hand with, well, now I need to get a certain type of ventilation, right? Whether I'm getting a chimney or I'm getting a wall hood, like that just goes hand in hand. So it's an additional cost, not only for, you know, your wallet, but for the planning stages. But when you look at induction, because it's such a, you're not getting that same type of debris and residue left over. It can be an over the range microwave with with a basic ventilation. So it offers some money savings. It offers some space savings. Just keep that in mind as well. There are other benefits to going with induction.
Great. Thank you very much. I think we have, and finally, Pippa's got another question about the removal of that old gas stove. I'm not sure if any of us know the answer, but presume, in other words, what happens to it? Susan, do you want to tackle that?
Best Buy will remove mine. I think it was a $29 fee. When they deliver my new induction stove, they will take away the gas stove.
But I think the question is really more beyond that. Then what happens to the old gas stove?
Yeah,
goes to
sorry, go ahead.
Goes to heaven. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, that's the prettier option. I mean, depending on the age of it, sometimes they can be salvaged for parts. But to your point, in terms of the environmental impact, they do try to be as environmentally conscious as possible to break it down, to make sure that the pieces, especially for things like fridges, like if you remove a fridge, there's refrigerant and all those other chemicals. So once these things are going to these salvage yards and to these appliance graveyards, for lack of a better term, they are dismantled and salvaged as safely as possible.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that. That was a good question too. Thank you, Pippa.
I think, Tim, one of the things on a practical matter, when you're cooking with them, you realize how extraordinary the technology is, because the timing of everything changes. For example, you're used to putting on the eggs, and then you make the toast, and then you do your coffee and whatever it is. It turns out that you really have to build in that you're going with jet fuel, basically. I hate to use fuel like that in reference to something that's ecologically sound, but the stove is so fast that you change the order that you cook in, essentially. So you say to yourself, I'll do the toast first, I'll get it almost done, and then I'll boil the water for the eggs. And you kind of change up, and it's a very easy evolution. I didn't find it difficult at all. And my stove actually has a pizza. I can make pizzas with a special adaptation in the oven. And they've done a lot of research on the ovens now, which are electrical, where the position of the food on the racks changes depending on what kind of food and what you're doing and what the timing is. So I've got a manual it's an extraordinary piece of work, where it says, okay, chicken is level 4 and you got to do it, and you do it for 8 minutes and whatever it is. And the controls, if you're boiling something and you want to take it off the boil, you turn it down, immediately the bubbles go. They're gone. And I don't know how that happens, because on a gas stove, it'll be slow. It's kind of a slow ease on things. So it's fast, it's accurate. It's an amazing thing.
Thank you, Sue. That's a great test.
That's my pitch on. I think they're great, actually.
Brian, we have one last question for you. Can you comment on how environmentally friendly the materials that go into that magnetic cooktop of an induction stove?
Unfortunately, I don't have access to that data. So I'm not even going to hazard a guess, because I don't want to provide you guys any incorrect information. But it's fairly standard. I mean, if you're making a magnetic circuit for an induction, this, or for an MRI, which is just sort of a bigger induction cooktop, it's still very standard. I don't think there's too much variance in terms of, okay, this is more environmentally egregious, this is not, but I don't have any exact details on that. But great question.
Yep, and it's one that we'll no doubt in the fullness of time know much more about. I do have a quick apropos to Sue's comment, and Susan, you referred to the stove that had the 2 ovens, and I remember when we interviewed Best Buy, one of the features of that that they described at the time was that if you get a stove that has the self-cleaning feature, which most environmentalists don't want to use, there's actually a benefit to doing so, which is they put a lot more insulation in those stoves, and therefore you're going to use a lot less energy, even if you don't use the self-cleaning function. When you're baking, broiling, etc., you're using less energy in those stoves that have more insulation because they have the self-cleaning feature. I would never have thought of that. So that was lovely. I do want to thank, before we lose too many more people, want to thank everybody for joining us. Please share the word. We will have, hopefully by tomorrow, the link on at harvardvillage.com on the induction stove page in the net zero section. So please do share it with your friends. We will send out a follow-up email as well to all of you who and others who registered but couldn't join us tonight with that link. We do have more webinars coming up, so do join our mailing list if you haven't. And now lastly, but not least, a huge thank you, Ryan, for sharing your expertise. Susan, to you for all your work in helping set up this bulk buy. Sue Dexter for your video, Matt in the background for helping us with the technical side, and all of you for your interest. Thank you very much. Matt, if you're still with us, you can hit the record button.